24th, it's 1 p.m. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Becca, can you take roll, please?
Director Underhill? Here. Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Thomas?
I'm here.
President Ratterman?
Here.
And Director Cicada is absent today.
Okay, next item on our agenda is public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment, 3 minutes or less on an item that is, any item that is not on our agenda today. Ralph Copeland, go ahead,
Oh, good afternoon, board. Ralph Copeland, Copperopolis. As I see it, President Ratterman and Director Davison owe Director Cicada an apology. At the last board meeting, Director Cicada pulled a financial agenda item. She had line-by-line questions regarding CCWD expenditures. At the end of the questions, President Ratterman reprimanded her for asking such questions during a board meeting, saying it wasn't a good look. Director Davidson also shared an opinion that asking, quote, 30 questions during a board meeting wasn't right. Both directors Ratterman and Davidson said these questions should be asked during their appropriate committee meetings. We are all adults. CCWD is run by professionals who can take constructive criticism from the board. Director Cicada is working for her constituents, and she had every right to do her job asking these questions. Lastly, CCWD posts a 1 p.m. meeting, and there's no end of meeting time designated. So I understand your need to get in and out of here, but again, doing the people's work shouldn't have a time limit on it unless you put it in your agenda. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, there's more public. More public.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Downing from West Point. I have a matter that I'd like to put on a future agenda. I purchased a home in 2019 and it is metered at the road, but also on a well. I've never used the public water. It is not connected to my house. I've been paying for the meter for 4 years now. Never used it once. So I'd like to see if there's a way to get a variance from the policies and have it disconnected and removed from the road.
Okay, thank you. Michael, do we understand what the request is? Okay.
You're trying to get another, give me your contact info. Yeah. And they start. Okay. That's thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? Anyone online? Their hand up? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. New business. No, I'm sorry, I got the wrong agenda. Okay, item 3 on our is a consent agenda. Item 3A, consent agenda. Report on monthly investment transaction for September 2023.
Move for approval.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, item 4, public hearing, discussion action regarding approval of district's capital R&R rate ordinance and amending financial management policy number 5.00 budget and fiscal policies. Jeffrey Meyer. Oh, we're going to open prior to his approaching the microphone. We're going to open the public hearing. Go ahead, Mr. Meyer.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Radaman, President Radaman, members of the board. The item before you is actually two separate requests. The first request is to adopt ordinance 2023-02, the district's capital funding ordinance. And then the second will amend financial management policy 5.00, our budget and fiscal policies. They basically do the same thing. A little history here. Back in 2013, the board adopted or approved the water and wastewater rate plan by adopting ordinance 2013-01. This ordinance included section 5, use of additional revenue, which established the capital renovation and replacement program known as capital R&R. Specifically, funds received as a result of a rate increase above the current rates as of July 10, 2013 must be placed in a restricted fund, and the funds must be used to fund the renovation and replacement of the district's existing capital infrastructure. The funds in this account cannot be used for any other purpose without a 4/5 vote of the full board of directors of the district. As you're aware, the recently approved rate plan eliminated the capital R&R component from the rates. To ensure adequate funding of the district's capital improvement program, staff has prepared a new capital funding plan that includes rescinding ordinance 2013-1, replacing it with 2023-02, which is an ordinance of the Calaveras County Water District designating funding levels for the water and wastewater capital improvement program. This new ordinance designates a base funding allocation of $3.4 million in the water capital funding and $1.3 million in wastewater capital funding. Furthermore, the base funding levels will be adjusted annually by the Engineering News Review, the ENR building cost index, to account for future construction cost increases. Finally, the new ordinance preserves the 4/5 voting requirement of the full board of directors to use these funds in this account for any other purpose. Concurrently, and that's the ordinance I'm requesting that your board adopt. Concurrently, staff is recommending that the board approve a resolution amending the district's financial management policy 5.00 budget and fiscal policies, specifically section 5.00.4, the capital improvement program or policy, and section 5.00.7, the rate setting policies. A red line version of these sections is included in your agenda package. The proposed capital funding program was presented to the Finance Committee on July 18th and August 15th, and to your board on September 27th. At that time, your board suggested that we include an escalation factor, the ENR, to the base amount to adjust it annually for future construction cost increases. Finally, today's public hearing was duly noticed in the Valley Springs News, the publication of record on October 13th and 20th. At this time, I'll take any questions.
Okay, we've reviewed this matter at the Finance Committee and we were in favor to bring it to the full board. I have no questions. Okay.
So what do we have to do? Do we have to close the public hearing and then vote, or how's it go?
What is the procedure?
Yeah, either way, but we can
We could have discussion.
Yeah.
have discussion, open public or have public comment, and then we can close the hearing and vote. Or you can vote during the public hearing too, either way. It's fine.
Okay, we're looking for public, your comments on the
Comments? Okay, all right. So this is saying that our bills are going to be coming in, and we're going to go to either the water or wastewater capital improvement program and deduct the funds. I mean, and how are we going to know what specific bills have to be paid out of there? That's what I don't understand.
And
Yeah, so we're taking it out of that. We're eliminating that accounting hurdle that we currently have. So this policy focuses just more on the expenditure side rather than worrying about the breaking up the rate to that level. So the focus is on the expenditure side, that we will maintain a minimum level of capital expenditures every year. And rates will be a part of that, but not all of that.
I know your board loves fund numbers, but bear with me on this. And this is kind of an accounting 101. When the rates come in, the rate revenues come in, currently, with the rates being split to R&R and operating, the operating portion goes, well, just deal with water. The operating portion goes into Fund 300, water operating, and then the R&R portion goes into Fund 125, the capital R&R fund. And that's how we currently do things. When we have CIP projects, those CIP projects are paid for funds out of the CIP fund, Fund 120. That's where we record all expenditures. The revenues that we pay for it, whether it's grant coming in or R&R funds coming in or the CIP loan, those go into 120 to pay for those projects. We reconcile at the end of each month to be able to make sure everything's paid for. 125 capital R&R will remain in place because we want to make sure that we have transparency, that we can identify them. So at the end of each month, we will move $283,330 from the operating fund 300, where all the new revenue will be coming in, because it's not segregated now. We'll be moving that amount over into capital R&R. The 283,330, actually it's 333.3333, is 1 month's worth of the $3.4 million that is in this ordinance. So we will be taking the money on a monthly basis, putting in this fund, the R&R, like we have in the past, but also being able to then utilize those to fund projects. I know it's kind of moving money around, but this is how we do it in the accounting world.
Let me try and explain what I think in a more of a layman's term. In 2013, the board created, we had, it was a rate, at our rate hearing, when we approved new rates. We created an ordinance at that time as part of that rate hearing, a process that all the new money from that 2013 raise and water and wastewater monies would go strictly to CIP and couldn't be spent on anything else, couldn't be spent on salaries, maintenance, or anything else. It had to go. That's been a nightmare for our accounting and finance gurus since then, and trying to keep track of that and have these different funds and different pockets that money was following in. In this rate hearing that we just had last month, which is almost exactly 8 years from that rate hearing, well, 8 years and a couple of months, we decided that we're getting rid of that pocket of money because of and our auditors in our audit have commented on it, how tough it is to follow that trail through. So what we did is got rid of that, but we as a board thought that's a good idea to have. I mean, basically holding someone's feet to the fire that they're spending this money on CIP, that we're spending that amount of money, that same amount of money that we had, that we put aside in 2013, and it's carried through. It's approximately these amounts here that it's carried through, with 1.4 and 1.3 in wastewater and 3.4 in water. We've held that it takes a 4/5 vote to get rid of that rule that we created in 2013. But in this rate hearing, in our new rates, we have gotten rid of that rule. And so we thought it was a good idea to create this new rule that we still have to spend that money on CIP. For this administration, and every administration going forward is required to spend at least this amount, plus the escalator that we've included with the engineering review, news review, building cost index is going to be attached to this. So it's 3.4 million in water this year, 1.3 in wastewater, and then that escalator will add whatever that escalation is each year to that pocket of money that it has to be spent on CIP. And the reason that was created back in 2013 is that we had heard from our ratepayers at that point in time that these were the same projects that were on the board 5 years before, and that CIP money was being collected and promising that we're going to be spending, but it wasn't being spent on it. So we did create a fund, and since then we've had a robust CIP project list and projects completed since that time.
This new ordinance basically does the same thing the old ordinance does, but the old ordinance put the split in the rates themselves. That's no longer part of the new rate plan. So what we're doing is we're creating another mechanism to shift the same amount of money, about 3.4 million, which is the average that we've done over the years for the water side, and 1.3 million in sewer, and dedicating those funds for capital improvement programs.
That's just the floor from rates, right?
Floor.
Well, that's a floor expenditure, and I'm just clarifying that I didn't have a misunderstanding, because what Jeff's describing is sort of internal accounting mechanisms that aren't necessarily in policy. That's how we might track those funds.
Yeah.
But the expenditure doesn't necessarily have to come from rates. It's a floor of what we will spend on capital infrastructure every year, not necessarily from rates. But in terms of capital expenditures, and that's what's enshrined in the policy before you. We can develop accounting mechanisms like Jeff has described to do that, but those mechanisms may change. What's in the ordinance won't change without board approval. That the expenditure side, we won't go below that floor in CapEx every year.
President Ratterman, it seems like that what we've done is unwittingly violated this previous ordinance, because we said that we've gotten rid of that, but there was no 4/5 vote or a recognition of the necessity for that. So do we have some housekeeping to do?
No, we haven't got. Oh, sorry. Do you want to respond?
No, I don't want to
Okay.
have to respond to that because I'm not quite sure.
We didn't violate it in any way. It was on the books. We did talk about this in finance and in front of the full board during the rate study to make sure that the board was aware that going forward, we wouldn't bifurcate the rate the way we did in the past, but that we would develop this policy to make sure that the expenditure level remained consistent. But from 2013 to present, we have implemented the board policy every year during that time. There's not been any lapse.
Well, what I hear Director Thomas's question being is when we voted that in 2013, it took 4/5 vote to get rid of it. How did we get rid of it without that 4/5 vote?
We haven't gotten rid of it. That's what this is doing. This is
Okay.
the amendment to the policy that eliminates that.
So we would need a 4/5 vote here. Is that correct? To get rid of that ordinance or policy that we created in 2013? Because that's what that policy said.
Yeah, because I don't believe we changed the policy before now.
No, we have
Right.
not.
We-
And
Yeah.
in actuality,
And a
the
copy
new
of it.
rates have just went into effect October 16th. So it's only moving forward that you're going to see this new process, because everything up until the new rates in place, we're still under the old program.
And again, it did create a nightmare. Like I said, we've heard it from our auditors and we've heard it from our finance department in tracking that money and having to keep it in separate accounts.
It was an accounting challenge, but it also served its purpose,
It
right?
did.
It was the district's effort to refocus on capital improvement, and we've done that over the last 10 years. We want to, the goal here is we want to maintain that focus on capital improvements.
Without the
and
financial.
fix the financial, the accounting
Okay.
issues. Yeah.
And my question is, what can possibly go wrong? Are you telling me that this is going to clean it all up?
It will allow us to be not in compliance, but it's in line with the new rates that you adopted, that your board adopted, that did not include the R&R component.
You mean the rates that were?
The board
the rates-
I apologize, yes. The board recently adopted, yes.
Which you are a member of the board. You did adopt those rates, whether you voted for them or not.
Okay.
They are what the
Oh,
board.
no, I understand. I understand.
The purpose between this ordinance and these policies are to continue the district's commitment to building CIP projects. and making sure that the monies are available for us to do those projects, not be pushed off into the side doing other things, as was mentioned, salaries and benefits and things like that, or the operating budgets. It's strictly on the capital improvement.
And as Director Davidson pointed out, this is the floor, and I think we spent much more than this,
Way more. Than this.
Oh, yeah.
way more than this in each of those 10 years. Maybe not the first year, but in each of the last 9 years, we've spent way more than this on capital improvement. There's so much.
Well, right,
projects.
and even if there was a given year where we didn't spend it in that year, it was dedicated to a capital reserve so that it could only be spent on that. And that's what we would do here. If we ever drop below that expenditure level in a given year, those funds are restricted to capital and infrastructure, and they would go into a capital reserve.
Yeah, it just depends on the speed of our projects.
Most of the time, we will be over that dollar amount in capital expenditures every year. But if we ever were to drop below, it doesn't mean that we're using that money elsewhere. That money will remain only for infrastructure, and it will just go into a reserve for that.
Yeah, we can take a motion within the public hearing, but we're not going to vote until after we hear public comment and close the public hearing. We can entertain a motion in a
I'll move
second
for acceptance.
and further comments.
I hate to be a disruptor here, but I think that the explanation for my previous question lies in that last sentence of this previous resolution that or the ordinance that said the funds in this account cannot be used for any other purpose without a 4/5 vote of the full board of directors. So what that is telling me and anybody else is that those monies that have been collected will never go below a certain point, and we won't be ever without having a 4/5 vote. This 4/5 vote requirement will continue. It'll go.
If we were to say that in a given year, we're not going to spend that level on infrastructure or put that money into an infrastructure reserve, if we were going to take anything from that money and spend it on the operating budget, essentially, that's what would require a 4/5 vote report.
Okay, as long as that's in the minutes, I'll second the motion.
Correct me if I'm wrong with that, Jeff, but that survives.
Okay, any further comment up here? Public comment, any public comment on this item? Anyone on online? Your hand up? I don't see anybody. Okay, Beck, will you take roll?
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
President Rademan.
Yes.
Now that was on the ordinance but am I correct in that? Okay, because now there's the resolution as well. Because there's a separate resolution adopting.
I'll move for acceptance of the resolution.
Second.
Okay, we're still in our public hearing. Any public comment on this item? Becca, will you take roll?
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
President Rademan.
Yes.
Thank you, members of the board, especially for indulging me in my accounting one.
And with that, we're going to close the public hearing. Move on to, thank you, Mr. Meyer. Move on to reports, general manager report, Michael.
Yeah, just to make sure we don't break the record of the shortest meeting, I'll drone on for about an hour here. Trying to lighten it up a little bit. Biggest work effort, I guess, or at least from the GM's perspective, since the last board meeting was our trip to DC, which I think was very successful. I think I'm not going to get into all of the details of the different meetings that we had and the productive outcomes of some of those meetings, but suffice it to say that Mia organized a really productive week for us again, as she always does. we learned a lot, and we were, we have a lot of follow-up work that comes from that. One of the things that we're waiting on right now when it comes to the Army Corps funding, which was a big focus of that trip, is a draft agreement from the Army Corps. We've been waiting on that for a while. We've been working on that with them for a long time. We thought we would have it done by now. But there are it seems like never ending bureaucratic hurdles here. But we will get through it. Hopefully, it's possible that we may have to schedule a special board meeting, because our next board meeting is November 15th is when that is scheduled. So I want to make sure we say that a couple of times here, because our regular meeting would have been the week before that. We're planning on just having the one meeting in November, on November 15th. But there's a quick turnaround time when we get the agreement with the Army Corps. When we finally receive the final version from them, we have a deadline to finalize it and get it back to them. And so if our next board meeting falls outside of that window, we may need a special board meeting to make sure we turn that around within that time frame. But we'll keep you posted on that.
Michael,
Yes.
this discussion with the Army Corps has really been going on for a long time.
Yes.
And they have asked us, or they were going to reduce the amount of money that they were going to put
No,
in.
so we've actually been pushing the dollar amount up over time. So it was initially a $3 million authorization. We have already increased the amount of the authorization to 13.2 million. And 2 million of that has already been appropriated to us in the federal budget. We're asking this year, the big ask is that we are able to appropriate the remaining amount. So the 11.2 million that is still authorized. That's a huge request for the Section 219 program. I know it sounds small in the federal budget scheme of things, but for this particular federal program, that's a kind of an unprecedented dollar amount. But in our work with the Sacramento district of the Army Corps, we I think have been able to convince them that you can't fund a 15, 17, now probably $20 million construction project on $1 million a year. We can't award a construction contract based on, hoping that we'll get another $1 million next year. That's not how construction projects work, and they recognize that. And so between our advocacy and their support for our request, Senator Feinstein put in a request in this year's Army Corps budget for that full 11.2 million of the remaining authorized amount. So the big focus for us last week, and I think why it was particularly timely for us to be there, even though we have dysfunctional Congress at the moment, was to make sure that Senator Feinstein's request is carried through. And so working, we had some really, I think, crucial meetings with Senator Padilla's office. Senator Butler's office is not yet set up. But we met with Senator Padilla's office. We met with Congressman McClintock's staff, and so that everybody is aware that request is pending. Senator Feinstein was the chair of the subcommittee, the appropriations subcommittee that oversaw the Army Corps' budget. So it carries a lot of weight for her to put that request in. And we're hoping that it stays at that dollar amount and that request is honored in the final budget if the government ever gets around to adopting a budget again.
So that we can't even establish, we can't even imagine a time frame right now because we have no working numbers.
It is a bit difficult under the circumstances, but we do, it's not uncommon every year. It seems like the government doesn't adopt the budget ahead of the fiscal year. There's always a few months of continuing resolutions, unfortunately. So far, it's no different this year. The question this year is, when are they going to get back to passing appropriations bills so that we can continue to fund the government and hopefully have a federal budget? One of the meetings we were in, the person floated the prospect of a whole year of continuing resolutions, which would be really.
Well, we do have a speaker now, so we do have hope.
So we're I'm sorry, we have a speaker now. I have missed that news.
Yeah, no, it just happened about an hour before this meeting started. We have a speaker in the chair.
All right, breaking news.
Yeah.
Louisiana,
Yes.
Who is it?
Who?
I think Thomas from Louisiana.
Johnson.
Johnson.
Johnson, yeah.
Oh, Johnson.
Jared, where were you on that, buddy? I should have had that news before. Well, that is good news. I don't
Yeah.
know anything about Johnson, but at least hopefully they will get back to the work of
Michael
passing
Johnson,
appropriations. Sorry, what was the first name?
Michael Johnson.
Oh, he sounds trustworthy. Hopefully get back to the business of passing appropriations bills and get things through. That is actually very good news.
We were told they were close to passing the appropriations before.
They put a lot of work into them already. So hopefully that will now move forward sooner rather than later. So that was there was a lot of other topics, and I'm probably going on too long on an unagendized item here. We can report out more on this. So a lot of other productive meetings, but that's always the biggest focus for us is infrastructure funding.
Yeah, I just had one other question.
Sure.
You alluded to meeting with different people and having positive, what kind of people or what subjects?
Yeah, so Senator Padilla's staff, we actually had 2 separate meetings with Senator Padilla's staff. As Congressman McClintock, Congressman Garamendi, the Assistant Secretary of the Army that oversees the Army Corps, blanking on others, but I'll have to go back and look at the itinerary and we can report out on.
I think that's it.
There was a few others. Anyways, we also met with our FERC council.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, anyways, it'll come back to me. But overall, yeah, very, very productive meetings. We still have actually a few coming up. Some of the offices that we want to meet with and that we normally do meet with weren't available during that timing. So November 1st and 2nd, we have another round of meetings that we're going to do virtually. So we'll have a virtual DC visit coming up in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
How was your meeting with the FERC council?
Very good. Yeah, we're putting together a very strong team. And I think we'll have a lot more to report out on North Fork project progress in the near future.
Okay, and you mentioned the dysfunctional Congress. Was that did that show on the streets of DC? Or, was it business as usual from that respect?
It showed in our meetings. We normally meet directly with Congressman Garamendi, but he was on the floor for the second Jordan vote. So we met with his staff instead. His staff, he's had the same staff for a long time. So good people that we had still had a very productive meeting with them. And then we were able to meet with Congressman McClintock later that day. And so it was nice to get some
Direct feedback.
unfiltered feedback. I guess that's one way to put it. A lot of people back there have strong feelings about what's happening, I guess, is one way to put it.
Yeah, there's plenty of opinions about the candidates for speaker. That's one thing that you can't do that when you're on these virtual meetings. You don't get that information. You don't get what's going to happen 2 weeks from now stuff. Well, it's always better.
Yeah, the in-person meeting.
It was very, very interesting going from a Democrat congressman's office to a Republican congressman's office and the point of view and things that were said.
And we took it upon ourselves to try to resolve the issue.
Yeah. And here we are.
Unfortunately,
And here we are, a week after attending, and
Add that
shook
to the
things
list.
up.
yeah. So you're welcome, America. So we took care of that issue as well. And Aqua DC staff, I knew there was at least one other very positive meeting with Aqua DC staff, including David Reynolds, who is retiring after 30 years as the federal legislative director for Aqua. And so we really appreciated the opportunity to meet with him and his staff. So yeah, overall, all very positive and productive. And then as soon as I get back to Calaveras County, I caught the last hour of what I think was a 4 or 5 hour tour of the Jenny Land Water Treatment Plant. I'll let Director Ratterman get into more detail on that since he was there for the whole thing, but I just want to make sure I give kudos to operations staff, Damon and his crew. Just put together a phenomenal tour, and John Brown in particular, just knocked it out of the park. He's so knowledgeable, and he's such a good, such an easy guy to listen to and talk to, and he's so responsive to questions. And it was just a really successful tour, I think. So we'll plan some more of those events. We had planned multiple sites for that afternoon, and they never left the treatment plant because John's tour was so detailed and so informative.
Yes.
That
He does a wonderful job.
he's just fantastic. On positive news, I want to officially announce and congratulate Kelly Gerkensmeyer, our new external affairs manager. That happened since the last board meeting as well. Yeah. Seems like a long time ago, but that was since the last board meeting.
Will there be a coronation meeting?
Yeah.
Goonies.
Kelly's already doing a phenomenal job in that role and still has a foot in water resources. And so we're gonna have to maintain that balance for a while until we're able to staff up in water resources again. We had 2 really strong candidates for that position. I just want to make sure to acknowledge that. And we're grateful for the interest and the candidates that we had for that position. Kelly's 22 years here, I think. Just brings a whole different perspective to that position than what we've had before. And I think it's just incredibly valuable for us to have that. And I also think I look at the management team now, and it's just so great that we have a big portion of our management team has come up through the CCWD ranks. And we're just really, really fortunate to have such awesome people here.
And are you adding that we will have no exits? I mean, they cannot leave.
I have notified people that
Yeah.
that Director Underhill has implemented a quitting. She called it a quitting freeze. I've extended it to
No,
retirement freeze as well.
It's just
So
a no trade clause.
no trade clause. Exactly. That's right.
How about the IT director position?
The position's still vacant. We're recruiting for it right now. We have a lot of vacant positions we're currently recruiting for. Working on that. So speaking of the Army Corps, circling back to water, we heard an update from them on reservoir conditions and outlook for the coming water year. It wasn't a whole lot more insightful than what most of you already know. It's an El Nino year, which could mean it's dry, it could mean it's wet. There's a equal chance, is the way they put it. Could be either.
Now that's comforting.
Yes, it doesn't tell you much, but you heard it from the experts. So, so there's that. The good news, as we all know, the good news is the reservoirs they are in good shape already. And so we're going into it with good reservoir storage as far as water supply is concerned, and then enough capacity for more water for flood control, which is their focus. We also heard from the Green Gen, the Moke River pump storage project. I just want to kind of keep that on the radar every once in a while. That group is very serious. They're moving through the licensing process. It's a long, costly process, as we know. We're monitoring the water resources side of it, and we'll stay involved in that as a stakeholder as that moves through the process.
Yeah.
So,
In their, press release or whatever, they talked about doing a survey. Did you get involved in participating in their survey?
no, not in their survey, no, but we are in their stakeholder groups.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will participate that way.
Well,
Anything
it
that
is.
impacts the Moke or any of our rivers.
it's
we're
called-
gonna be-
protect the economy.
Oh, that might be a different group.
Oh, okay.
So we'll keep you posted on that when there are significant new developments. They're really in deep into the study and reporting stakeholder outreach phase, as we soon will be. Other than that, in water resources, with Brad's absence, just to report out briefly, we're as we tend to do when we have these vacancies, we pull a team together of anyone who was involved in any aspect of that. And so we're meeting on a regular basis to make sure that our reporting requirements, and we went through them again this morning, and it's just a bit head spinning every time you go back through our water resources reporting requirements, how much we have to report, and sometimes redundant reports, and it's a regulatory burden, but we will make sure that we're not missing any of it. So there are consequences to not complying with those reporting requirements. So we're on top of all that. Mark Rincon, Kelly, and myself, and along with operations staff, and we have to bring in admin services on it as well. It's definitely a team approach to pull all the data together, and then still utilizing Jeff Meyer, the other Jeff Meyer, and a consulting role, and just making sure that we have all of those pieces covered. And then along those lines, I think I announced this already, a new engineer is starting November 1st. In that timeframe, somewhere around there. We're very excited about him, and he does have, he's I think we'll have some focus on, or some portion of his job will be in water resources, but it'll be a combination. Obviously CIP, our infrastructure is our highest priority, and it is, taking up all of our bandwidth from engineering. And with Charles's retirement, it'll be ramping up engineering staff to cover the CIP efforts that we have underway right now. But I think engineering will also be taking a larger role in water resources.
Will there be some time for, training, or just, with Charles and the new engineer? Is that?
Yeah, there'll be exactly, what is it, 2.5 months of overlap if we cancel Christmas, which we're working on. So it's yeah, it'll be, I think I think he might just spend a couple of months attached to Charles and downloading.
Right. Uh-huh. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, there will be a little bit of overlap. I mean, 2.5 months when it comes to how complex CCWD is and how much we have going on in engineering and operations. That's going to fly by, and he'll be drinking through a fire hose, but at least there'll be some overlap there, and we'll try to take advantage of it as much as possible.
What's the new engineer's name?
Juan Mayo? Maya.
Maya?
Yes.
Juan.
Yes.
Anything further, Michael?
I'm gonna defer on our other announcement to a video that Kelly posted on Facebook today. I would encourage you all to take a look at it. I don't think we need to do it here, but yeah, we have other stuff that we're dealing with, but this is probably not the right time to get into it.
Michael, I have a question about Tridam. We have a new external affairs director here, and with Susan Larson's departure from Tridam, I know that you have Summer Nicotero's number on your speed dial, but have you thought about the possibility of getting together with Kelly and that new external person from Tridam?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if they've hired a replacement for Susan yet.
I think they have.
Have they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll reach out to Summer and we'll find out. And yeah, I'd like to meet that person myself, and absolutely, that's an important relationship.
It's pretty important for the Copperopolis area.
Yeah.
Okay, moving, we're on board reports, information, future I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay, go ahead. Public comment on Michael Winkler's general manager's report.
Was it too short for you or?
Okay, thank you, Michael, for the presentation. It's just really curious what Mia had to offer regarding Senator Butler, Dianne Feinstein's replacement. What's the plan, man? Just wondering about that. The public sure would like a brief readout of your Washington DC
Yeah.
meetings. That would be
We're working on
excellent.
that.
And
Yeah.
tell all that, maybe put some of it out there. And then again, you're adding, contributing to your excellent CCWD team. And yeah, Trident does have a new public relations. I don't know their name, but
Okay.
say he's working.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we are working on a report out on that, and we even remembered to take pictures this time. I'm not, I need to learn that lesson more often. So yeah, we're working on a more detailed report out on that. Was there another question in there? I'm sorry.
No, moving on to board reports, information, future agenda items. Director Thomas.
You'll be pleased to hear that I don't have anything to report this time. So,
In the interest of time, very pleased to hear that. Not that time is even of interest,
We have
but
12 minutes. We have 12
Director
minutes.
Davidson, on to you.
I got a couple things, just in regards to our DC trips, just some of the subject matter that was prevalent. There was a lot of information on forest management, particularly by Congressman Garamendi's staff, who actually floated new legislation by us, which I really enjoyed that because they know that we're involved in it. They know that it's important to the area, and they're going to be proposing some new changes in, I believe, the Farm Bill, was it?
Yeah.
That will change the definition of the fuel on the forest floor, so more can be taken out, which should make all of these, smaller generation plants more profitable, and just by reducing the trucking costs. So I thought that was really interesting, and it was pretty cool that they, pulled us aside after we had talked about all the things we want. They said, "Hey, this is something we want from you. We'd like you to look at this and give our feedback," and that was pretty neat.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it will help biomass projects like the one we're developing. I think it's a positive development, and they're reaching out to agencies like us that can help spread the word to garner more support for it. So yeah, that was a very valuable piece of information.
Good. And also, it's always a pleasure to be inside the Pentagon and to have the high level of meetings that we had. The one thing I'll mention of that, again, we're trying to get the money appropriated so we can start a project. And I thought that the Assistant Secretary, she understood when we brought up the escalating, just month by month, the escalating construction and material costs. They get that. And so we're hoping that will push them to get us, the full amount of funding. And then, of course, we asked for a little bit more. We also had quite a few meetings regarding the FERC relicensing reform, which I think there's two separate bills that are there's a House bill and a Senate bill. So that is something they're working on, the high cost of the FERC relicensing and the bureaucratic mess, and particularly Congressman McClintock was all in on that effort. And even, the Aqua DC staff, it was great talking with them about current things. I think you asked something about the Senator Butler's office.
Yeah, sorry.
The one thing we've had such a great relationship with Senator Feinstein's staff over the years. It's really disappointing. We've been told that they're probably not going to take any of her staff. And so they're out. It's going to take them a while to get up to speed, which is a little frustrating. But we also had terrific meetings with Senator Padilla's staff, and it really looks like he's going to be, he's the senior senator now. And but it's those committees will shift, and it's going to be a different dynamic. But regardless, I still think, particularly with the chaos that was going on in the city in general, Mia did just a great job putting us in front of, the right people. And so I was still very thankful to have her up there. I have one more political comment. Was in the Capitol 3 or 4 times last week. Every time I had to take my belt off, put all my stuff on a conveyor and go through just like you do the airport. But for some reason, several thousand Palestinian supporters didn't have to do that. They just walked right in. So anyway, that's the end of my public comment.
And just to touch on that a little bit more, Ralph, sorry, I knew there was another question in there, but yeah, it remains to be seen, I think it would be wise if, not that I'm on the inside of any of this, but it seemed to make sense to us that Senator Butler would hang on to some of Senator Feinstein's key staff, especially because of the role that she played in California Water. She's just an enormous presence in California Water. She always has been. And she told one of the things that Dave Reynolds at Aqua shared with us that she once told him that California Water, of all the things that she worked on, and she worked on a lot of tough issues, California Water was the toughest issue she came across. And she just played a really active role on that. Her staff are experts on it, which is unusual when you meet with staff, legislative staff. It's usually us that are trying to educate them on the issues. She had experts among her staff on California Water. And so our hope is that they retain at least some of that, but it looks like they're mostly developing new stuff.
They did say that they have 2 months on payroll before they have to go, and most likely they'll either go private or somebody else will pick them up, in the building. Well, or they could become staffer for another senator, another congressman. I mean, they bounce around quite a
Well,
bit.
we did hear on that subject, on Turner's, the new Senator Turner, and our senior senator is only 2 years in.
Butler.
Well, Padilla's only got 2 years, so I'm saying our senior senator only has 2 years in, but Butler, the staff, we did hear from one person that they're not going to retain anybody. Then we heard from another person that watch what rumors you listen to. There's a lot of speculation. And so that's still up in the air. When we heard we're not going to retain anybody, we also heard that they're not firing anybody. They're just going to ask them to look for new jobs as they hire new staff. So I'm very leery on whether or not either one of those rumors.
Who knows? Yeah.
But
So we don't know.
yeah, we don't. Speculation on the street is just as good as the information we
And
got.
we know as much as anybody else. We don't know nothing.
Director Underhill.
Yes, because we have no water in White Pines, we are looking at closing down for the year. And that will happen November. Closing off the bathrooms and, just the operation up there.
On that note, though, no water in White Pines, but kudos to our operations staff up there who I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait to get up there, but by all accounts, it looks phenomenal.
It is absolutely
There.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And as I say, when we talk Thule removal next year, we're going to say we're doing a Dillon. Let me see. I did have another note that I can't find. Oh, I know. I just picked up in the Valley Springs News the fact that there is a UPUD. They're going to be forming a committee for the purpose of qualifying for the ballot and an initiative to repeal the recent water rate increase. So I thought that was interesting. So
Yeah, there is an effort underway to overturn the recent rate increase up there.
for UPUD. So that's
Okay, the two things. The Washington DC visit was phenomenal. I just can't say how easy it is. We've been doing this for 8 or 9 years in a row, looking for the same thing. We finally brought home $1 million last year, $1 million this year, looking at, and everyone's so positive on our appropriation or for the another 11.2, and that's growing. We're looking now, hopefully that'll continue. We get this pushed through this year, hopefully. And McClintock, there's one more thing, walking into his office and how engaged he is. We were talking about the FERC licensing thing and brought up these two bills that Director Davidson brought up. One's an Assembly bill, there's a Senate bill. He said, "What's the Assembly bill?" I looked at his new chief of staff guy sitting behind us and said, "Make sure I'm a co-author of that." I mean, he's very active for us and working for us. It's and on our, even though he doesn't do earmarks, he makes phone calls, he writes letters. He pushes things through that might work just as well. Jenny Lynn tour was phenomenal. I too was looking forward to seeing a couple different plants. So once I saw what the deep dive were, I think we saw every corner of that water treatment plant. Kelly was there, I think, documenting the thing very well. Pat and Damon, Jesse were also there to answer questions. Christian, David, and John Brown is phenomenal. I think he knows every square inch of that place and how to run it with his eyes closed. It is a very complicated plant. It seems like everything from the intake to the running the magnesium, getting the magnesium out of the water. It's a very complicated situation down there with a lot of constraints. And I think it was an amazing tour. The tour was done for this coalition of interested party, people interested in it's Francisco,
De La Cruz.
Mike De La Cruz, Michael Rogers, Mike Castro, and Stephanie. I'm not quite sure Stephanie's last name. There's another gentleman that belongs to their group, Pat Roy, that wasn't able to make it. But a group of very interested people interested in how CCWD is operated and following through on or helping us follow through on our pledges and promises on these capital improvement projects and running his operation as smoothly as we can. We have other tours are already being set up. With that, I have nothing.
I think it's important to emphasize that tour came about as as a result of their specific request for such a tour and others. So to their credit.
And they've also requested a couple more tours of our facilities. I think it behooves us to do those tours and for us here to get involved with those tours when we can.
Which tours did they want?
We're looking at another tour in the Valley.
I think they want to see A to B, the A to B alignment next. Yeah, which I think is a good idea. It's an important project. Any word on the status of the hummingbird, Damon? Do we know? Survival? Okay, check.
And we could be including the directors from those district areas.
Absolutely.
What was your question, Michael? I'm sorry.
Just the status of the hummingbird. Steffi and I tried to rescue a hummingbird at the end there. All of us did, but yeah.
Was that little bird saved?
We'll find out.
Okay, all right. Next board meeting, Wednesday, November 15th, 1 PM. On my calendar, there's a conflict with camera on that day.
Yeah, we're gonna reach out to camera. Reschedule.
Okay.
Oh.
We already have? What's the? Okay. Wednesday, the next meeting after that is Wednesday, December 13th, 1 PM here. We have two items.
Sorry, can I make one last quick announcement?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we don't need closed session today, but I do think it was since the last board meeting that we received the CPPA grant. I don't think I reported out on that last time. So I just want to make sure we celebrate that a little bit. Jesse and Brian Crumpacker and the electrical crew pulled the information together. And it'll provide us with some operational upgrades, but also cost savings on our electrical bill. So we received almost $30,000 grant from CPPA to make some electrical improvements. So
You're gonna take 20,000 a year.
yeah, saves us 20,000 a year. So
And Kelly did.
For the rate increase, they'll be on it.
Kelly did report out on that, so the rest of the community knows about it all.
Yeah,
already.
we did put,
That's what I know.
we put it out there, but I just want to make sure we acknowledge the people that were behind it, did a great job in pulling that together.
And when things settle down around here, Kelly will also be putting together a short report on our Washington DC successes. Okay,
Excuse me, did you say there was no closed session?
no closed session today. We're gonna be moving to adjournment here in just a second. But you're in the way. But you're in the way.
Wait, excuse me.
Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm through. As Ralph pointed out, there's no time limit. There's no end to this meeting. It's up to
Okay,
you.
how many minutes do I have?
Well, how many minutes do you need?
I'm through.
Okay. Anything further? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.